Most people dedicate their entire lives to wrestling with their emotions, but they're fighting the wrong battle on the wrong battlefield. They feel a surge of anger, and they try to smother it. Fear creeps in, so they attempt to banish it. Someone pushes a button, and they scramble to manage the button pusher. But here's what they miss. The button isn't the issue, and neither is the reaction. The real problem is the architecture underneath, the hidden wiring that sparks the reaction in the first place. Think of it as a faulty engine. You could spend all your time at the tailpipe trying to filter out the bad exhaust. You'd be busy, but the engine would keep sputtering out toxic fumes. Nothing would fundamentally change. Now imagine you pop the hood. You go to the source, the core mechanics. You fix the engine. Now the exhaust coming out is clean. That's the power of a truly strategic mindset. It doesn't fight the symptoms, it redesigns the entire operating system. Once you rebuild that internal architecture, that psychological framework, something shifts. People stop being able to unsettle you. Not because you're putting on a mask of strength, not because you're forcing a calm you don't feel, but because you've become fundamentally inaccessible. You've moved the control room. Machiavelli understood a truth that's mostly forgotten today. The individual who can't be emotionally map their fears, their triggers, their patterns holds an unassailable position. The person who dictates the emotional flow of an interaction dictates the outcome, and you can only dictate that flow when your internal state is a mystery. This isn't about becoming cold or stoic. Coldness is still a predictable pattern. It can be analyzed. This is about becoming something more potent, fluid, layered, and structurally beyond reach. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through 7 distinct psychological principles drawn from strategic thought that will fundamentally alter how you operate under pressure. This isn't a list of positive affirmations or surface-level hacks. This is a guide to re-engineering your mental responses at the foundational level. By the time we're done, you'll grasp not just the actions to take, but the deep-seated logic that makes them work. And once you have the why, you can apply the how anywhere. You don't fight the reaction, you redesign the machine that creates it. If this resonates with you, drop this in the comments. I am the engineer. Let's begin. 1. Severing the stimulus reaction link. *** Machiavelli wrote that to command others, you must first command yourself. But how do you command an internal process that feels automatic? Most people are hardwired like this. An event occurs, a rude comment, a dismissive glance, a public challenge. That event hits the brain, and almost instantly an emotion ignites: anger, shame, anxiety. And a breath later, that emotion drives a reaction, a sharp retort, a defensive posture, a visible flinch. Event, emotion, reaction. It feels like a natural law, like gravity. But it's not. It's a learned habit, a neural pathway worn deep by repetition. And any habit can be rewritten. Trigger decoupling is the process of breaking that chain. You're forging a pause, a sliver of space between the external event and your internal response. And that space, that pause, is where your power lives. Think of a time someone got under your skin. What happened? Your brain flagged the event as a threat and set off an alarming emotional reaction before your conscious mind could even consider the context. That's an emotional hijacking. Your logical thinking shuts down, and whoever lit the fuse now has a hand on your steering wheel. When you practice decoupling, you interrupt that hijack. You train your nervous system to hesitate even for a second. In that hesitation, you reclaim the power of interpretation. You decide if this moment deserves an emotional investment. You become the one who assigns meaning, not the event itself. This isn't built overnight. Start small. The next time irritation bubbles up before you speak or act, ask yourself one question. What is objectively happening right now? Not how you feel about it, not what it reminds you of, just the bare facts. That question creates the gap. That gap is your dominion. Over time, the gap widens. Your reactions slow, and people around you sense a change. They poke and prod, but nothing comes back. They realize they have no handle to grip, and without a handle, they have no control. Drop this in the comments. I own my pause. 2. The observer's vantage point. *** Machiavelli spoke of the lion and the fox, one to frighten wolves, the other to recognize traps. To see the trap, you can't be standing in it. The key is to shift your perspective. The core problem is this. Most people feel emotions because they view themselves as the target. Someone insults you, and you feel personally assaulted. Someone dismisses you, and he feels threatened. That this is happening to be posture is the most vulnerable place to stand. You have skin in the game, which means you have emotional exposure. Now, imagine shifting from being the target to being the observer. When someone insults you, you stop receiving it as a wound and start analyzing it as data. It becomes, this individual is attempting to establish dominance through verbal provocation. Disrespect becomes, this person is signaling a perceived status difference. Anger becomes, there is a high level of emotional activation in this interaction. When you shift from participant to spectator, something fundamental changes. The emotional gravity of the moment diminishes because that gravity only exists inside the experience. From a detached vantage point, it loses its power to move you. This isn't about pretending the situation isn't real, it's about altering your relationship to it. You're no longer in the storm, you're watching it from a dry, elevated ridge. From there, you see the entire landscape, the other person's motives, the dynamics at play, and the most effective move. People who operate from this place are the ones who stay inexplicably calm in chaos. It's not that they feel nothing, it's that they've relocated their consciousness to a position the chaos can't reach. Drop this in the comments. I observe. I decide. 3. The layered self. Machiavelli noted that everyone sees the surface of who you appear to be, but few ever grasp the depth of who you are. When that depth is complex, even contradictory, no one can form a complete picture of you. And without a clear picture, they can't predict you. Without prediction, they can't formulate a strategy against you. Most people are emotionally simple, not because they lack intelligence, but because they operate in one emotional gear at a time. They're either anxious or calm, interested or bored, confident or hesitant. A single visible state, and a single visible state is a readable state. People scan you and think they know your position. They know you're excited because you lean in. They know you're threatened because you get sharp. They know you're uncertain because you fidget. These patterns become levers they can pull. Layering is the practice of holding multiple, seemingly contradictory states at once. Calm but deeply alert. Your body language is relaxed, but your attention is hyper-focused, catching every micro-expression, every tonal shift. Detached but fully engaged. You appear unconcerned, but internally you're processing, evaluating, deciding. Present but unmoved. You're in the conversation, but the outcome doesn't touch your core. You're a poker player, fully immersed in the game, but emotionally unattached to any single hand. Why does this make you unreadable? Because people can only see the top layer. They see the calm and think they have you figured out. They see the detachment and build a mental model. But their model is incomplete, built on partial data. And an incomplete model produces wrong predictions. They try to anticipate your move, and they're off. They try to provoke a specific response, and they get something unexpected. Predictability is a vulnerability. Complexity is armor. Build this by practicing duality in low-stakes moments. Be present and observe. Be relaxed and sharp. Over time, this layered state becomes your default, and your default becomes impenetrable. 4. Currency of reaction. Every time you react, a smile for praise, a furrowed brow for criticism, excitement for good newser handing someone a map, a live, updating map of your inner world. They learn what impresses you, what unsettles you, what rewards you, what punishes you. And with that map, they can navigate you. Manipulators and skilled negotiators understand this implicitly. Your reactions are the doors to your psyche. To be unreachable, you stop handing out maps. Reaction value suppression means treating your reactions as a finite, precious resource, something you deploy with purpose, not by reflex. Before you react, you ask yourself, does revealing my state in this moment serve me strategically? Sometimes, showing emotion is a power move. It builds rapport, signals authenticity. In those cases, you react intentionally. But most of the time, an automatic reaction serves someone else. Someone tosses a provocative statement your way, hoping to see you flinch. They want that flash of irritation. They want confirmation that they can access you. If you give it to them, they win a small battle. They know the door exists. When you suppress that reaction, when you let the provocation land and give back nothing, the dynamic flips. First, the other person experiences a psychological disconnect. They threw something and got no reciprocity. Humans expect emotional exchanges to be returned when they aren't. It creates a subtle vertigo. Second, they stop trying. Provocation is only rewarding if there's a payoff. No, payoff means the behavior is pointless. They subconsciously learn you're not a viable target. Third, your internal sense of sovereignty strengthens. Each time you choose non-reaction, you build a muscle. Over time, you become genuinely impervious to small provocations because you've trained yourself to be. This doesn't mean you become a blank wall. It means you become selective. Your reactions become rare and therefore meaningful. When you do choose to react, it carries weight. People pay attention because it's an event, not a constant. Drop this in the comments. My silence is power. 5. Clearing the emotional debris. Machiavelli wrote that physical wounds heal, but wounds inflicted by words fester. He recognized the power of emotional memory and how it can be weaponized against you. Emotional memory doesn't just store pain, it builds patterns. And patterns are handles for control. Think of people you know who carry their history like a heavy backpack. They remember every slight, replay every embarrassment, hold on to every betrayal. They've built a whole identity around these memories. I'm someone who gets overlooked. I'm someone who gets disrespected. These aren't just unpleasant thoughts, they are predictive scripts. They shape behavior to confirm themselves. You become predictable because you're operating from a script written by past pain. Worse, others can read this residue. They can sense when you're still reacting to an old wound. A person who can read your emotional history can use it either by positioning themselves as the solution to your pain or by poking the wound to destabilize you. Emotional memory erasure discipline is the art of distinguishing between two things, emotional residue and useful data. Emotional residue, the lingering anger, the resentment, the personal narrative clouds judgment and makes you predictable. You don't need to store it. Useful data, factual intelligence about someone's behavior, their patterns, their history sharpens judgment. You must keep that. The difference is everything. You don't forget that someone lied to you. That's a fact. You store it as data. This person has demonstrated a willingness to deceive. That informs future strategy. But you don't carry the anger about the lie. You don't replay it. You extract the intelligence and release the emotional charge. It sounds simple, but it's difficult because the brain is wired to cling to painful experiences for survival. Fighting it requires conscious effort. When you catch yourself replaying a past slight, stop. Ask, what is the useful information here? Extract it, store it cleanly, and consciously release the emotional static attached to it. You don't need the anger to remember the lesson. The lesson and the anger are separate. Over time, this practice makes you a person who isn't dragged by the past. You're not reactive, not wounded, not running an old script. You're present, and a present mind is an unpredictable mind. Drop this in comments. I carry data, not pain. 6. Fracturing the public image. Machiavelli said that a prince who relies solely on fortune is ruined when it changes. Similarly, the person who cultivates a perfectly consistent public image is vulnerable the moment someone figures out how to use that image against them. Consistency feels safe, but it's also a cage. Humans are pattern recognition machines. We build mental models of others. She's the quiet one. He gets flustered under pressure. They always take charge. These models are how we navigate social landscapes. But here's the strategic truth. If someone has a complete, accurate model of you, they have a blueprint for handling you. They know your entry points. They know what works and what doesn't. That blueprint is a form of leverage. Perception fragmentation control is the strategy of deliberate, controlled inconsistency. Not random chaos, but curated variation across different contexts. In one meeting, you're quiet, observant, letting others speak. People leave thinking you're reserved, maybe even shy. In another meeting, you speak early, with authority, setting the direction. People leave with a completely different impression, decisive, commanding. With one colleague, you're warm and personal. With another, you're cool and strictly professional. In one situation, you move with urgency. In another, you're unhurried, as if you have all the time in the world. Each version is authentically you. You're not performing, you're choosing which facet to lead with. But from the outside, anyone trying to compile these observations into a single coherent picture of you will find the pieces don't fit. The image is blurry, and a blurry image yields a weak strategy. Someone trying to outmaneuver you won't know where to start. They'll try one approach and get an unexpected response. They'll recalibrate, try another, and get something else they didn't anticipate. They'll spend their energy recalibrating while you operate freely. The more you practice this deliberate inconsistency, the more strategically unpredictable you become. And in the hands of a calculated mind, unpredictability is one of the most potent tools available. 7. Opting out of the emotional economy. *** Machiavelli is famous for the line about being feared or loved. But he understood a third, even more powerful position to be neither. To step outside the emotional exchange entirely. To be unavailable for the transaction. Every human interaction has an emotional dimension. It's an energy transfer. Someone brings enthusiasm, looking for you to match it. Someone brings hostility, testing to see if you'll absorb it or push back. Someone brings neediness, reaching out for your validation. Someone brings anxiety, wanting you to soothe it. The unspoken social contract is that when someone sends emotional energy, you receive it and respond. You match, you counter, you engage. Emotional non-participation means you opt out of that contract. You don't resist the energy. Resistance is still engagement. You don't counter it. Counting is engagement. You simply don't participate. The energy is sent and it lands on nothing. It disappears into a void. This creates a profound psychological disorientation. The human mind is wired to expect reciprocity. When you send energy and get energy back, the loop closes. The world makes sense. But when you send energy and get nothing, not agreement, not disagreement, not warmth, not coldness, the loop stays open. An open loop creates psychological tension. The other person's mind will work hard to close it. They'll escalate, become more provocative, more dramatic, all in an attempt to finally get a reaction that completes the loop. And while they're escalating, while they're revealing their own needs, fears, and tactics in their frantic attempt to get a response, you're watching, calm, clear, learning everything you need to know about them while giving them nothing to use against you. Emotional non-participation isn't coldness, it's strategic absence. You're present physically, perhaps even engaged in conversation, but your emotional core is not in the room. It's somewhere they can't touch. Start by identifying exchanges you don't need to participate in. Someone vents to make you feel guilty. Acknowledge the words without absorbing the guilt. Someone brags to make you feel impressed. Register the information without giving the performance they want. Little by little, you become someone who is simply not available for emotional manipulation. Not because you're guarded, but because you've removed the target. The core truth across all 7 principles is this: the location of your emotional core is your greatest strategic asset. When it's on the surface, visible, reactive, easy to find, you're at the mercy of anyone skilled enough to reach for it. And people will reach for it, consciously or not, mapping your emotional architecture in real time. The goal isn't thicker armor, it's moving the target to where it can't be found. But when your core is hidden, when it's been moved to an unreachable location, the entire game changes. People can't trigger what they can't find. They can't manipulate what they can't reach. They can't predict what they can't read. These 7 principles aren't about becoming a machine. Emotional depth, connection, and real presence remain available to you. In fact, they become richer when they are chosen, not forced. The goal isn't to feel less, it's to control when, where, and how your inner life is visible. The person with no emotional control is a puppet of their environment, rising and falling with external events. The person with surface-level control looks calm but is still accessible. But the person who has rebuilt their internal architecture from the inside out, who lives these principles, is something else entirely. Not just calm but free. Not guarded but unreachable. Not pretending to be strong but structurally impenetrable. Uncertainty is the one thing the human mind cannot dominate. It can respond to strength, counter weakness, exploit predictability, but it cannot navigate what it cannot map. When you become the unmappable person in any room, your inner world, complex, shifting and invisible, you hold a power that doesn't need to be announced, doesn't need to be defended, and cannot be taken from you. So your task going forward, don't waste energy trying to feel less or appear tougher. Invest it in rebuilding the structure. Redesign the factory. Engineer the machine. Once the system is built right, nothing it produces can be used against you. Go back through these 7 ideas. Pick the one that hit hardest. Practice it every day for 2 weeks. You don't need all 7 at once. 1. practiced with discipline, will change how you move through the world. Then add another and another until the whole system is rebuilt and no one can find the door. If this resonated, if it shifted your perspective, hit the like button. Share this video with someone who needs it, someone who's getting triggered, pushed around or controlled and doesn't yet have the tools to stop. And if you're not subscribed to Winds of Thought yet, hit that subscribe button now. And to close, drop this final affirmation in the comments. Structurally unreachable, because that's what you're building. Not a wall, not a shield, a different kind of structure, one that can't be touched because it can't be found. Go build it.